So, it's 8 a.m. in the morning. What are we talking about?
Success. So we talked about it before, and I thought it could be interesting to see how we define it now, and depending how long this goes, to see and how often this thing would change, to see how it changes, right?
So what is success right now?
Okay, so success, we've established before, is dynamic and individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's most commonly attributed to just achieving goals.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, from what I saw, it's classified into 4 domains. So professional, personal, academic, and social.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about this?
Continue. Yeah.
Okay. So, when I just thought about it, just blank slate, I was like, they're gonna weigh differently in my mind. Because I do have goals for all 4 areas.
Mm-hmm.
But, call it maybe in quotation marks, my intuition. I was like, I think I weigh personal the most at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Professional and academic are tied just because we're uni students and we're sort of building to the professional. And then social's a little bit less. What about you?
So, if you achieve personal, like if you meet your personal goals and not necessarily your social goals, would that still be success? Or do you have to meet all of your goals to consider yourself successful?
Well, for me, it was more so that all of them are interconnected, right? And one success will lead to another. So I think that's why if I weigh personal more, it just spills into the other areas. So, but still ideally achieving success in all fields, right?
Mm-hmm. When you're setting goals, what kind of goals?
So this book, Atomic Habits, it's come at a very interesting time. I'm exactly halfway through it. It speaks a lot about how it's not about goal setting, it's about system setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is probably to build functioning systems. But what was your question?
I'm saying, how do you
How do I set my goals?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's just circumstance and environment, and past experience.
But is it like you want to have accomplished this by this time, or you want this specific metric on this test, or how specific? Yes.
You set time to your goals.
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't thought about this. Well, since it's the systems thinking approach, then I would rather be in the state that the goal would be achieved, I suppose, as soon as possible. It's just working towards that rather than having a deadline.
So, for example, your goal would not be to get fit, but rather to go to the gym 3 times a week.
Yeah, to build that good habit as soon as possible. Okay, stop it. Shut up.
Build that good habit as soon as possible.
Yeah, to possess.
So when do you know that you it has been achieved? Yeah. It's like if you do it consistently for a month, has the goal been achieved, or 3 months, or just whenever you feel comfortable enough to call it a habit?
Well, I think a habit is, in my mind, that I'm willing to form would be one that ultimately makes me happy or somewhat fulfilled and satisfied. So up till the point when it's, there's a potential that it could become a burden as time goes on, and it just becomes a bigger burden after that. So part of it is the whole mental side of it to make it appealing in my mind, call it that. So up till a point where it becomes muscle memory to do it, and that it also makes me happy. Okay. What about you?
I don't know. I read Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
And I understand the whole setting systems rather than goal chasing. Because in the long run it does help. But for me, I still find it helpful to have a set goal.
Mm-hmm.
But then a lot of the things you read, some of them are like, okay, be very specific with your goals so that you can really track them. Some of them are like, set horizon level goal, so you can, if you land somewhere in the ballpark, you know you still made it. And like, so for me, like, if I look at my set of goals, I do it yearly. It's like some of them are very specific, like hit 70 kg, and some of them are like very vague, like have a CV that I'm proud of, you know, like one of them is like very specific, number specific, and then one of them is like, okay, just something that I can reflect on by the end of the year. And then, so my idea of what a very good CV at the start of the year or as I'm going through the year will look very different by the time I'm by the time I'm evaluating whether or not I met that goal. But yeah, for me it's a mix of both. One interesting thing though, on my bike ride here, I was thinking about is whether like how strict I set my goals, because I don't remember who said this to me one time, but we were talking about something and they're like you can push yourself more or something like that. And I think about that, like maybe the goals that I set are not pushing hard enough, like, and it's hard to find that level of, okay, this is a good goal where like I will really have to like get out of my comfort zone to meet, versus like, oh, I could probably meet this goal, I'm just putting it there so that at the end I can like get that happy feeling when I tick it off. So am I really pushing myself, or am I just staying within what I think I know and like staying very safely within?
Would the ideal goal be a scenario where you still push yourself but it's still attainable?
I think I like the idea of an attainable goal. I don't like setting goals are like you can't reach it, and that's the point, to keep pushing yourself even though you know you wouldn't reach it, because then for me I would just not even try as hard.
Yeah, for me, I'd say the same. I think it matters more to me right now that I'm attaining it rather than trying to push myself more, because I think having attainable goals are, I suppose, more rewarding towards developing to my full potential, rather than trying to push myself to utilize my full potential. I think is what train of thought in my head is.
When at the start of the year, when I was trying to set my goals, I thought about like, so the whole reason for like having a good CV, like that's an example of where like the initial thing was, okay, have like a job or an internship by the end of the year, or like have an internship experience. But then a part of me was like scared that it wouldn't happen and then it would just be left unchecked. So I was like, okay, let me switch it, and I can remember this is a systems mentality of like setting the system up, and then if a CV is good enough, surely the job would come as a byproduct. So then focusing more on the CV part of it. But it's like I'm still keeping myself within the safety net of like, okay, this is something that I could do. It still pushed me. Like I've worked on portfolio projects to make my CV look better, but just I feel like if I had set the goal to have a job, maybe I might have pushed myself more. Who knows? But it's stuff like that like makes me think about my goal setting.
Well, yeah, I think that one's very much like to each their own, because I think for me, if I were to just push for a job, I'd likely take a very messy route to go about it. And it's like if I miss the mark, I'd likely be in a worse position than if I set the goal to make a decent CV. You know, because if you have a decent CV, your fallback is a decent CV. If you push for a job, your fallback might be square one again, looking for a job, right?
Sure.
Something I came upon that I thought was interesting was in the personal success, one of the theories behind it is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Did you do this in school? Do you know about it?
I think I've heard about it before.
Yeah, he basically said that in order for someone to reach their personal success, which he defined as just basically fulfillment and satisfaction, so he called it self-actualization. At the top of his pyramid, you have to cover your 4 basic levels of needs. The first one is physiological, so food, water, shelter, basically, and then following that was safety, so to feel safe in your environment, and then came esteem was the second to the top. Oh, behavior and love, basically. So if you feel supported by your family, and then esteem if you feel respect. Do you think this is something you agree with? That you need basically all these bases to...
I feel like it's vague enough to apply to everybody, so probably.
Do you value personal success? What are your...
Well, yeah.
What's
I
the
feel like
pushing
for me, all the success is personal.
That's what I think too.
But yeah, I also have this thing in my notion where it's like a 5-year thing, and then like for each of the things I have like where I would ideally want to be in 5 years, or like a little paragraph or a checklist relating to family, professional development, and then also like socially with friends. And so yeah, I think like a lot of it is like has to do with, you know, like what you said about like self-esteem and whatever on the path to self-actualization. I feel like it's just what everyone does, you know, like looking for that life fulfillment, which I don't think I'm gonna get at the end of 5 years. But like it's just steps taken on the way. Like for me right now, how I define success is being able to like, not even for myself, but like little things, like if my sister wants a birthday present, like I can get it for her, but not like a I don't know how to explain it, like not like a really expensive present, but like a €100 perfume, or like a Polaroid camera, like stuff like that, or something I can get for, like I've got stuff for my parents. I've got my mom like a pearl bracelet. Those like €15 from America, but like just so like if I can hold my own as well as provide for, like, you know, like give gifts, I guess, to my family. Like for me right now would be, I would call that successful, me in my current state. Yeah. And obviously like on my way to that, the other things would come, like getting a job, or like having a degree, or like being happy with myself in order to then be able to like spend on family. I guess right now it's very material, which, yeah. What about you?
Is this like your 5-year goal? Or
This is my current definition of success.
To have a degree, have a job, and be able to do those things.
Yeah, so the definition would be to do those things. I'm just saying the intermediary goals to get to that point would then be everything else. So then in the end, everything is personal, right?
Well, I think for me right now, remember in the previous one, I think it was the motivation podcast, I told you like I think setting a foundation is really important, right? I think that sort of goes with the whole theory of this, like this hierarchy. Like the important part is to cover your bases, and I think I'm still at that point. So my definition of success would be to still build that up well enough to do these other things. I think you're past that, but for me, I think it's become really dynamic because I'm really like influenced by people around me, to the point where I think it pretty much changes if I'm suddenly in a new social group, and that's why I have to focus on that. That's interesting that you have these, like, I think they're relatively large goals for right now. Where do you think?
But yours, I feel like, so that's the thing with the time thing. Yours is probably like shorter term than what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, but I imagine that how I define success will change a lot after this period is.
How long is this period?
This one,
The rest
I
of
could
the
maybe
year?
even put it. Pardon?
Rest of the year?
I think if I did things right, then possibly like 3 months. I think it's possible, and then likely in those 3 months, like once those are up, my goals will look a lot like what you're going for, but you know, some variation.
Yeah.
But in terms of like 3-year goals, 5-year goals, then it leans more to what I probably think of as professional success, because this will follow personal. I think that's where my focus would be.
When I first read Atomic, I mean, like, for me, I had this like epiphany when I turned 18, or like the weeks after, and then like from like the rest of the month of March, I'll see it carrying until midsummer. Like I really worked on it, and then like when this semester started, I felt comfortable enough to like put that to the back of my head and like think about other stuff. But it was also because like thing is, it didn't even work on a semester scale, because like I said, I set my goals yearly, and that started like last year. So I had my 2023 goals, and when I had met those, or like when I reflected on those, like, okay, I feel like I've moved past that stage, and now for 2024 I have a different set of goals, which to me I think are weaker than my last year goals, or maybe because I now have the toolkit to perform, it seems easier to achieve. But for me, I think like the time aspect helps it. So why don't you like why don't you
set
yeah.
time? Mainly because I've been a lot less, I suppose, disciplined in the previous years. I think likely the next week I'll set a time aspect to it once, if I stay on this trajectory, which would be the whole idea of achieving these goals. How do you set, I don't know, more bigger goals in the case that you achieve the ones that you have for yearly? So like the case of your CV, do you still aim to get an internship, even though your technical yearly goal is to have a CV?
See, that's the thing. So no. I like,
okay.
It would probably implicitly happen where, okay, if I meet my goal like halfway through the year, I'd want to progress further, but it's not something that I explicitly mention or say anything about. Like for one of like 70 kg by like early in the year, I think after the Christmas break, I was already at 72. But then I dropped back down to 67. So like it's fluctuating. See, so that one's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to track. But because it's so like specific, even if I was 70 kg for most of the year, and then by the end of the year I dropped back below 70, and it's like, what do I say? You know?
What would you say?
I don't know. It will probably be a fail, because I want that to be the baseline. Yeah. I want the 70 kg to be like a baseline thing, rather than like a periodic thing. So like, if I lose weight, it should go back down to 70 at least. But yeah, I normally don't set further goals, and I barely look at them until like I'm getting towards the end of the year, and I see, okay, have I really gotten further or not?
But they're in the back of your mind. They're somewhere.
Yeah. Like one of them is 1% better than last year. That's something that I just keep.
1%?
Yeah. So that's the idea of like, at least every tiny improvement is an improvement. So like, if I fail everything else, I should be able to check that off. Otherwise, I have like actually not done anything that year. You know, it's just like, it's not like a real goal, but it's like a pseudo goal where it's like, okay, you know, like as long as you're getting 1% better, even if you don't meet all your goals, that one you should be able to say confidently that you, like, looking back, you're a little better. like, yeah, I feel like looking back, some of them are weak. Like, two of them are just about consistency. One with gym, one with football. And it's like, to me, those seem like bullshit goals. Because I think it would be very easy to check them off. But I think a goal should be something that you work hard to get.
Do you see any value in setting maybe 6-month goals alongside your 1-year goals?
So when I started, I had weekly goals.
Whoa.
It wasn't really like a to-do list, because I had my daily to-do, but like weekly goals, like by the end of the week, I want to be able to say, no, it was just to do like things I have to do. Like it wasn't like really goals, but like I had like weekly goals, and then like at the end of the week, I would want to be able to say, okay, I've met these goals. But then it was starting to get a little too fast paced for me. And like if I didn't check something off for the week, it would just push over to next week, and then it started getting a little long. So I just switched it. Like I just literally deleted that whole page from my Notion board.
Interesting. I think it takes a certain, I don't know, motivation to set yearly goals. I know some people who don't even see the value in setting yearly goals or like 5-year goals, just because they're well oriented in their mind to constantly just go towards it. That, you know, they don't need to think, okay, I'm gonna set a threat, like a milestone for me to just check off later on.
I think it's always good to write it down at least. But yeah, I was gonna ask, and I completely forgot.
I think maybe after this, because I don't know, just because of how much things are changing nowadays, I think when I sit down to set my goals, I'll likely do a 6-month and a 1 year. The 1 year is mainly just, I don't know, they're slightly different, but I can't quite explain it.
Do you do like reflections on the year and like New Year resolutions and stuff like that?
I did reflections.
Or like on your birthday or.
Yeah, I try to, but I think one of my goals would be to incorporate it more. There was a time where I tried like daily reflections, but then it morphed very quickly into just a recollection of what happened during the day, because I found that more interesting to talk about. So yeah, not at the moment, but I think it would be interesting to incorporate it. Do you?
Yearly, yeah, and I did have a daily reflection phase, which is kind of changed a little, but for me it was more about like, yes, tracking progress through the day and like figuring out what went well, what didn't, so then like it's written down what I have to like work on for the next day or the next time. But now it's just turned into a big event thing where like if something like important or significant happens, then I'll write about it and like what I learned from the situation, rather than like an everyday thing. Because I feel like once you get into the routine of like once you start having habits, like your day starts to look more of the same, and like the lessons that you will learn, like of don't do this or keep doing that, it kind of starts to repeat itself. So it's like, okay, I don't need to do this every day, but I have it documented like from the start. Like sometimes like I'll just read through and like remember, oh okay, like I used to do this shit, like do I still do it? A little bit, but it's less now, or like stuff like that where it's already there. Like it used to be daily from like I want to say March till April, May.
Last year?
Yeah. And then now it's like you'll see one for June, one for October, one for like January 7th. Like, and these are all like just big things that happened. But yeah, I think like just writing things down helps me visualize better what my goals are, what my definition of success is. It also helps like looking back, because like you said, like if your definition of success keeps changing, you might get lost in like that sea of like, have I ever really been successful? But then looking back, like, okay, I used to be like this, and back then my goal was who I am now, and so I will count this as success.
Okay, let's talk goals now. Like actual goals. What's on your list?
Go ahead.
You could do it one each.
Sure, I need to look at it.
Well, these are coming off the top of my head.
Okay.
Maybe it would be good to write them down as I'm saying it. I don't know. I've never, till this point, I've never actually really set goals. I think I'm not to say I wasn't the type of person to do it. I think I wasn't just accountable to do it. What do you think of the split of personal, professional, social, and academic?
I mean, like I said, it all ties
into I think if you tried, you could split it.
Like, one of mine is to keep my GPA above 8.5. That's academic, but that's still like a personal thing. Like,
yeah, but that's all of this is personal. All of your goals.
Exactly.
The point of success is that it's personal.
So what would be personal that is not academic?
Family.
I feel like that's social.
Family and anything. Maslow's hierarchy is split between physical and spiritual. Mm-hmm. So anything that's like mental and whatnot would be that. Social is just peers. I'm pretty sure, like just your social life. Your family is not part of your social life, they're part of you. Okay. A GPA above 8.5. That seems low for you.
I don't think so, because I had Regina, I don't want to say this, but I had Regina like last semester, and everything was a good to her. And a good is just an 8. If everything is a good, yeah.
Yeah, but
that really messed me up.
That's fair.
And you can't get a 10 apparently. The highest you can get is a 9. So I think that is not very low.
Yeah, it's not low. It's just like
that's half excellence and half goods. And
yeah, it's just it's dependent on your core lecture.
Yeah, it literally depends on it. I want to complain about that so bad, but
okay, well. Okay, there we go. One of my academic goals is to. I wrote down like use the time meaningfully, but that would be reflected through grades that like aren't below a good, and just putting in effort. So coming to school, doing lecture prep, being like attentive in class, and things like that. That would be probably my equivalent of that.
One of mine is have an income.
Have an income.
Have money coming in through more than just my parents sending me money. I still don't get paid. Everything is set up now. Hopefully, I should get like last month and this month by next week. But
you still haven't.
Yeah.
What?
So that was one just. It wasn't even about like me feeling cheated or anything, but it's just like. I feel like it's the next step in growing up where like you have. You get paid for work, or like doing work and then getting money for doing that work. So that was one of my, I guess you could say, professional goals.
You see, I've done like so many years of tutoring that it's warped my view a little bit on just that, but I think that is a good one to set. I guess at this moment, disappointingly, I don't have any professional goals just because they're so tied in with my academic. This is why I say I think 6 months in a year is valuable, because if I can set 6 months and achieve my academic goals, then at that 6 month mark I'll be able to set a professional goal that I can say is my yearly one. If I were to say professional, let's say this, I've been meaning to go on LinkedIn and figure out what I want to do. So I'll say that's my goal to. Wow, this putting to words thing is hard.
but I think it helps.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's just annoying. Yeah, I'll say a field, like a field that I want to work in.
Mm-hmm. Figuring
Also,
that out.
Yeah, figuring out field of work.
I think that's an important one.
Yeah, it'll help the masters and minor choice a lot.
Yeah, that's one of mine as well. Like, I guess figuring out master's program. But that's also like kind of hard to track. Like, if you narrow it down to like two things and you keep switching between both, is that you still figuring out? Because I mean, would you have figured it out then? Because at the start you didn't know at all, but now you have two very clear things in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Would you count that a success or a fail? Like,
I would count it just because I feel, well, for me it's like, what if I change so much by the end of the year that I'm no longer happy with the single choice I made? I think giving yourself an option is good. Well, yeah, ditto. I want to figure out my master's.
Okay.
I want to figure out the country. It's country, university, and study, right? For me, at least.
Yeah. One of mine is to finish my reading list, but that's kind of interesting. I feel like I've switched the topic that I like to read have changed a little. Where like all of the books like Atomic Habits, they kind of start repeating the same thing if you read enough of them. So it's like I have 5 things on here that were from like my last year's reading list that I didn't finish that are added to my this year's reading list, which are now like more on like political theory related. Like, it's a whole list that I have like of another 6 books. So it's like, do I still count the books from last year, even though I probably will not read them?
How do you feel about altering your goals? Is that something that you would do?
I feel like that's shifting the goalposts.
During the year.
I try not to do that.
But now with this reading list, you're in a bit of a conundrum because
Yeah.
it goes against what you want, which means it goes against what serves you. And it will translate into you not meeting a goal unless you shift the goalpost.
I still think I will focus more on the books that I want to read now, and then if I get to all of the other books by the end, there are still some books on my previous reading list that I still want to read. 1 or 2, but the other like 3, 4, I probably know already that I wouldn't get to, and I'm not gonna meet that goal. And like, to me, that's fine.
How many books do you have on your list?
So from last year on,
There's 6 from last year?
5 from last year,
Okay.
and 6 now. But then I also got a book for my birthday, and that's what I'm reading now, but it's a novel. So, I mean, I'm just reading it, like, because, like, it was a gift. It was a birthday gift. Like, I feel like I have to read it.
Wow.
So, I'm going to finish that probably over spring break, and then, like, actually start reading the books that I want to read. Because I actually haven't read anything this year, which is bad. Well, I started reading, but then the book that I picked was shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I don't know if realistically I can finish a book a month, so I'd say maybe a book every 2 months would be a goal. So it would be 6 books, and now let's say of those 6 books, my goal would likely be say 2 or 3. Okay, say it's gonna be 2 self-help books. So are they called self-help? Yeah. And then
I hate that term. It sounds so
yeah,
like,
it's got a bad connotation now. 2 academic related books, so probably something about maybe both of them will be about statistics. Maybe one will be about theory, and then the last 2 will just be fiction because I like reading fiction. I think that would be my goals if I reach 6 books a year. But Yeah, I think it's a good baseline.
But so here's the thing. So Atomic Habits will tell you that that's not a good goal, and that your goal should be to read 5 minutes every day. And then in doing that, you would then get to finish your reading list.
Right.
At some point.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that? Do you think you should set the goal to be the habit of reading every 10 minutes before you go to bed, or like pairing the bad habit with a good habit? So like when you feel like going for a smoke, you read 5 minutes of your book that you're reading, and then the idea is that by the end you would finish your reading list. Or do you say you want to finish the reading list, and then however you get there, because I did last year have a goal of like reading at least 10 minutes when I wake up and 10 minutes before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
I still do it here and there now, but I read more just whenever I have the time to, which is then less consistent than what I was doing last year.
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Okay, for me right now, I've picked up reading more than I did last year. I used to be a big fan of it, and then I had a bit of a hiatus, and now I've picked it up again. Yes, I see the value of setting the time thing. There definitely is a time element to me. It's just more habitual now, which is why I suppose it's not a goal. I don't see much value in 5 minutes every day, because the days where I don't want to, or if I'm not going to get into it, I think they add up to be the thing over like being a burden. I think I see value in maybe, not necessarily when I have time, but on average I'd say reliably 3 or 4 times a week I'll really want to read, and therefore before I go to bed, the minimum of that will likely be half an hour. The max will likely be an hour and a half, which is why I can confidently say that, okay, maybe 3 to 4 times a week is a bit of a stretch. I'd say 2 or 3 times a week, which is why I can confidently say that on average I can finish a book a month or in a month and a half, which I think is better than my track record from all the previous years, and therefore this is not something I will change just because I can rely on myself to do that at this time being.
You think you already have reading as a habit locked down, more or less?
For me, that relies a lot on having interesting books, and I found out for the past 4 books that I've read that they've been interesting, and the current one that I'm reading is interesting, except like yesterday I tried to say that like the half an hour before bedtime, half an hour was now my 5 minutes, I'd read this book. However, I was just uninterested, and I know this book is something that interests me, so I know that in a few days I will want to read this, and therefore I'm just going to leave it to that. That's my current state. Yeah. Okay. I don't think forcing myself to, unless I'm forcing myself to read something uninteresting, it's fine. Also, with audiobooks counted, completing a book.
Sure.
Yeah.
Still a book.
Because the previous Habits book, I was just struggling to get through, and that one was one I was doing 5 minutes every night, and I'm still almost nowhere in it just because I try to be productive. But now, listening to audiobooks on the bike ride, that's a lot more productive. I think I just have a general keep reading goal. Okay. Otherwise, I'm at risk of not reading. What's your relationship with reading?
No, so I get what you mean about having the book being interesting. Like I said, like a chapter every night, but then like in the morning I literally did not have time to read more than a chapter, but at night, like if I set my goal of a chapter and I would just happen to read more than a chapter, and then that helped with just being consistent with reading. Because for me, like as a kid, when I got a book, I would just read it as fast as possible. I didn't have anything else to care about, so like as soon as my dad would bring me a book, I would just start reading and then literally not stop until I finished. But now that I have other things to do, it was very easy for it to fall to the back of my list. And like I would even like do the things of like putting the Kindle like by my bed, like before I go to bed, or like in the morning when I leave. So when I come back, it's always like next to the thing I'm about to do, right? So then you link to habits going to bed and like reading, like waking up and reading, because then I put it by my alarm clock, whatever. But so then that like would keep me accountable in reading every morning, every night. But when I didn't have that, even if my Kindle was by my bed, I just would not like really pay attention to it until like maybe a couple of weeks would pass and then okay, I didn't read for like a burst and then stop again. So for me, it helps me to like set that goal of like a chapter every morning, chapter every evening, because then I end up doing more than that in that time. But just knowing that I've allocated that time, it helps a lot. One more goal, and then I think we should leave because our lecture's at 9 and it's 8:53.
What? Okay, go. Do a social.
Social
family.
I don't have a social goal for 2024.
Or I don't know, something that's more personal than just like work.
Do I? Okay. You go. I'm looking.
Okay. Well, the social one was to be surrounded by, like, setting up a good environment for myself. So I realized I'm actually happy with my social life, contrary to my previous belief.
You're still what?
I'm happy with my social life.
Okay.
Just because I want a productive environment. And that means I've achieved my goal. Yay. Your turn.
I don't have a social goal. I have.
Did you have the family one you just said?
But that's like the 5 years thing.
Oh, okay.
But it's like, okay.
Okay, then choose a random one.
Develop like more transparency with my sisters and not my sisters, just one of them. Like the other one's like 10 years old. We're not gonna talk about like deep stuff. But already like with my sister, we've already gotten like to that level, I would say. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that's just because she's like getting like, as we grow older, even though the age gap stays the same, the life gap kind of closes, right? Because like 13 and 10 is so much bigger than like 20 and 23.
Yeah.
So like she's starting to experience things that I can relate to more now and can give advice on. Like that's one of them.
That's a good one.
Socially, I really haven't like put anything. I feel like for me, my social life is more like of a wing it kind of thing, because I feel like setting goals for social life kind of makes everything robotic and ingenuine.
I also think you're in that position where you can just trust yourself, and everything you'll do is part of what you want, and therefore you don't need actual goals for it. That's interesting. Your family ones. I have a very generic family one, which is just like maintain a good relationship. Pretty much.
I mean, what I said is kind of like that. It's working towards
it's specific.
A good relationship. So my habits ones for like by 2028 is to see. So these things I said last year in 2023, and they were fully integrate Notion into daily life, fully integrate reading as a habit. I think I've already done those. Do I add more for 2028, or would these then be for 2029? I feel like that's the hard thing with time specific goals, because you might have such a skewed perspective of how long something would take.
Maybe it would be interesting to start maybe trying to use the words like set a habit of doing this, because it's like I saw this thing that was speaking about laundry, and people are like, you should stop seeing laundry as something that will be completed, because laundry is an ongoing task. So some of my goals are ongoing. It's like, it's not that once I've achieved it, I need to take it off my list, because I would still like to have it within a year, which means technically it is still my goal of next year, despite knowing that I have achieved it this year. So there is a bit of a debate there. What did you just mumble?
Laundry's an ongoing. That doesn't make sense.
That laundry, you can't see laundry as something that's completed. Like, oh, I've done the laundry, because you'll have more laundry. You'll even have more while you're doing it.
You've done it for like, if you do your laundry.
Yeah, for a week, but usually people see it as another burden. Be like, oh, I still have laundry, and then it's like you should. If you stop seeing.
Something you have to do.
Okay, let's go to class.
How do you see laundry as a burden? That's just dirty, man.